So today I've entitled today's sermon, I Know a Guy. Kendall has been putting together a list. Do you already have this? Are you handing it out, the list of if you need this, call this number, go visit this place. If something breaks, you can call this guy. He's got a list. If you haven't gotten that list yet, get it from Kendall. It's the I Know a Guy list, okay? It's like, I know somebody who can help you handle this problem. And I want to say, for all of us, this is part of us being with one church, Calvary family. For you guys' background, one church, we're planting another campus. We've grown, we're about outgrown this building. We've outgrown our parking, if you haven't noticed. So we're planting another campus on the other side of the interstate this spring. And we got a guy coming that is already here, preparing to do that, excited about it. But as we come together and we're reaching out more and more, man, I can't tell you how big of an impact, this is why college ministry means so much to me. The impact that First Baptist Morgantown, I'm a West Virginia University grad, that First Baptist Morgantown had on my life, my wife's life, all our college students, and the contacts that we made there with professors, with deans, with mentors, with advisors. And we are intentionally, I want to say this something philosophically just for you guys, this is just a little caveat. We are intentionally a multi-generational church. What I mean by that, hey, if you are here this morning and you're over 65 and willing to admit it, will you stand up right now? If you're over 65, willing to admit it, will you stand up? Just stay standing. Just stay standing. Now stay standing. I know you're older and it's hard to stand that long, so I just play it. Don't be mad at me. But these are like grandparents for you all right? Now, a lot of you are leaving grandma and grandpa behind. But these are people who can step in and be for that. Like some of the people that impacted my life and Dee's life the most were people that were over 65 at First Baptist Morgantown. So we don't want to be just one age demographic. We want to look like all ages, all right? You folks can sit down, thank you. If you are 45 to 65, will you stand up, okay? 45 to 65, there we go. We got a lot of those. We got a lot of these, okay? These are your parents for the next 4 years, okay? They are for you. They're not against you. They're willing to have you in their homes. They love you. You can call them mom and dad while they're here. Get in our academy classes. We have academy classes during both hours, and I just love it. That's what Mike Circione told me, moving here from another church, is how he's got people from 18 to 80 in his academy class. It's like a Sunday school. They meet at 9 o'clock, and it's all different ages, getting to know people like that, okay? These are your parents. Everybody, all the college students, say hi, mom and dad. This is your mom and dad. Okay, there you go. All right, you guys can sit down. All right, everybody who's 22 to 45, stand up, okay? 22 to 45, that's a lot of these too, right? There you go. These are your big sisters, big brothers, and they're also your crazy uncles, okay? These are the people. These are the big brothers, big sis, and crazy uncles. Everybody needs a crazy uncle in their life. Raise your hand if you got a crazy uncle. Raise your hand if you got a crazy. Just about everybody's got a crazy uncle, all right? We got plenty of them for you here, okay? All right, everybody can sit down. Welcome. All right, not only that, if you are under 18 or under, like not college students, not 18, college students, but if you are still in high school or younger, will you please stand up, all right? There we go. Let's welcome them. Yeah, fantastic. These are your little brothers and little sisters. You can beat them up just like if you ever get tired, like, I need somebody to beat on. That's why we have a student ministry. It's just for you, okay? Thank you so much. Great to see Lillian up here worshiping today, leading worship today. So just so thankful. So we are. I just want you to see, like, that was pretty even, was it not? We're intentional about that because we believe that God has something that people at every age of life can get. That's what church family looks like. Every week, we're just having a big family reunion. And it's a foreshadowing to the great family reunion we're going to see in Revelation chapter 7. People from all tribes, all nations, all ages going to be standing before the throne and worshiping Jesus forever. Okay? So thank you all for being a part of that. Okay, now let's get back to it. I know a guy. All right, I'm going to end this sermon with I know a guy story. I'm going to tell you about a guy that we know, and this is honestly the story of Joseph. My wife and I were talking last night. Is my favorite story in the Bible. I mean, it's better than any Broadway play. Like, it's one of those things you can't make it up, and it's so real. It's incredible, the story of Joseph. And we're jumping in the middle. We still have 2 weeks of his life. Next couple weeks, we're going to be talking about that. But the impact that this young man, eventually man, made on planet Earth is really immeasurable, okay? Let's go back and review a little bit. You had a young man named Joseph whose mom died when he was at a very young age. His mother's name was Rachel. He had some older brothers. They didn't like him so much. Even though he was very intelligent, he was favored by his father. His father saw early on he had the integrity and some innate giftedness that hadn't been developed yet, and he was going to entrust his multi-million-dollar business and give the firstborn rights to Joseph, all right? And that's why he gave him the coat of many colors, and he put him in charge of the older brothers. And then Joseph, even though he was good-hearted, sometimes when you're young, when he's 17 years old, he did something really stupid, okay? And I know that when y'all were 17, most of you never did anything stupid, but Joseph did. God gave him a dream that someday his brothers would bow down to him. But he didn't have, sometimes you do naive things when you're 17. You just think everybody loves you and the world's great and everybody's going to treat you well. And so he was stupid enough to say to his older brothers, not only am I going to be in charge of the business, but someday all of you are going to bow down before me. And this is one of those things from a self-awareness aspect. You don't need to tell everybody everything you dream about. Sometimes you need to keep things to yourself. Sometimes you got to think, how will these people receive? So he's not ready for what God has for him 13 years later. He's not ready for it at 17. And because of that, God has to put him down in a pit. And that's what his brothers do. God uses the brothers to teach Joseph a lesson like you got to watch. Like you got to watch what you say to others. They throw him in the pit. They were discussing killing him. He's already lost his mom, and now eventually, though, they sell him into slavery, and he's down in Egypt with people he doesn't know, sitting as the lowest slave in a household of a guy named Potiphar, who's the director of the Secret Service. He's called the captain of the guard for Egypt. He's the right-hand man to the Pharaoh, overseeing all the security, just like we have the Secret Service that oversees the security for the President of the United States, most powerful man in the world at that time. Now, Joseph there, because he's got some natural giftedness, Potiphar, the chief of the guard, he recognizes, man, this guy's got some skills. And so as he's developing those skills that his father had put into him, Potiphar starts saying, man, I'm going to start putting you in charge of all my businesses and in my house. Now, while he's doing that, here's Potiphar, and he's got this young wife who's very attractive, and she's reaching out to Joseph all the time because she sees Joseph's all attractive. Potiphar's all the time doing Secret Service stuff. He's working probably 24/7 down there taking care of Pharaoh. She's probably a neglected woman, and so she starts taking a liking to Joseph. And she was like, hey, won't you come lie with me? Like, come be with me. And Joseph doesn't sin in what he's going to do next, but on one day, it's what we talked about a few weeks ago, his life's going to change again. Even though he's a slave, he's in charge of everything in this guy's house. It says one day when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house. It's not sin, but it's stupid. He put himself in a situation. He knew this woman was attracted to him. He knew she was married to somebody else, but he was still naive enough to think it's okay for me to be alone with someone who's not a member of my family, who's married to somebody else. This could go very poorly. So he's not ready for what God has for him next, because even though he has giftedness, even though he has skills, he doesn't have the world smarts he needs just yet. So this is what happens. She caught him by his garment saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and he fled and he got out of the house. So she's reaching for him, grabs his coat. He runs out the door. He does the thing, what the Bible tells us to do, to flee from sexual immorality. He probably, if he would have been, if he would have made the wrong choice at her, like his life would have gone a completely different direction, he probably would have been killed, okay? Pharaoh's captain of the guard, Potiphar, comes home, and the wife makes up this story. Soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. Now, I think his anger is at his wife because he knows how his wife is. He realizes he probably hasn't been around as much as he should have. And so he goes to Joseph, and instead of killing him, which Egyptian law, that an attempted rape was a capital punishment then. You could kill people for that. That's for Egyptians, let alone a Hebrew slave. But Joseph's master, Potiphar, took him and he put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Now, this isn't like Alcatraz. This is the Martha Stewart prison, okay? This is this is where political prisoners go. It's where the rich guys go. And there he was in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph. And he showed him steadfast love, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So this is what I really think's happened. We're going to see a little bit later why I think this. Is Potiphar puts him in charge in the prison, and he tells the warden there, "Hey, this kid's pretty sharp. I had to get him out of my house. Something happened to him and my wife. I'm not going to kill him over it, but I'm just telling you, man, I entrusted him with everything in my house. He was in charge of all my business dealings. I know he's young. He's probably 19, 20 years old at this time." He says, "But I think he can run your prison for you." So the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. And the keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. And this is something that we see today that honestly a lot of our society has rejected. Is when we lead our lives, when we lead our businesses, when we lead our schools, when we lead our families according to God's principles of integrity, then human beings will flourish. God doesn't give us the rules in the Bible to down us or to take our fun away. He does it so that we will do well. What do I mean by that? If you're in a marriage where you speak honestly with each other, you will be trust. If you're faithful to each other, it will build more trust. But if you're in a marriage where you lie to each other, it will lead to a lack of trust. There'll be no communication. That marriage won't last. If you cheat on each other, it's very difficult to build that trust again. Same way in a business, in friendships. You got to tell the truth to one another. You got to keep your word. You got to keep your commitments. This is what Joseph's doing. Like he would plan, he would work hard, he'd be diligent, just like God instructs us in his word to doing. When human beings treat each other with respect, when they love one another, when they serve with one another, you flourish. Same way in a church. We see our church flourishing right now, not only because we're loving God and worshiping one, but everybody who joined here is saying, I will serve in some capacity on a regular basis here, okay? I will serve one, and then I will connect and love with other people. So that's what we see right now, and that's why we're flourishing like we are. God is making him succeed, but here's what I want you to see right away, is once again what Joseph finds is he's in God's waiting room. And a lot of times that's the hardest place to be, is waiting for what God has for you next. A lot of times when you're a freshman, man, you just can't wait till you're an upperclassman. And then someday, I can't wait till my senior year. And then your senior year gets here, and somewhere around December of high school senior year, you start saying, I can't wait to get out of here. Like you just enjoyed it for 4 months, but now you're like, I'm ready to go to college. And then your freshman year, you get ready to go to college, and like you're enjoying the college life, and you're like, I'm prepping so I can get a job someday. Like I can't wait till I get out of college and I can start a job and I'm making money. And then you get out of college and then you start a job and you start making money. You're like, I can't wait to get married. And then you're like, you get married and you're like, I wish I wasn't married. All right, it's like these things, like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't wait till we get along better. I can't wait till we have kids. I can't wait till my kids quit tearing up everything. I can't wait till they become teenagers. Then they become teenagers. You're like, I wish they could go back to being little kids. And then I can't wait till they graduate. I can't wait till they're empty nest. Now you're empty nest. You're like, I wish my kids would come back to see me. I got to build up all this money. Why? So I can retire someday. And then you get to retire and you say, I'm bored. We spend our whole life waiting for the next thing, not growing in God's waiting room like he designed. Some of you are sitting right now in God's waiting room. What's next? What's next? What's next? Instead of living fully in your current situation. Joseph doesn't have the discernment he needs at 20 years old to do what God's going to have for him at 30 years old. So God's got to keep him in the waiting room a little bit longer, and in his case, the waiting room is prison. And I want to share this with everybody in the room. If you find yourself stuck in God's waiting room, keep working on your competencies and your character so that when the next opportunity presents itself to you, you'll be emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, relationally, socially ready. And you'll be so good at that time that they'll have to give you the next opportunity. Now, there's two things I want you to recognize about Joseph while he's in God's waiting room. Number one, just accept this. If you're going to change the world like Joseph did, if you're going to be a leader, you will never belong. Many of us live our lives, like I was saying earlier, not just from a competency or wishing for the next stage, but always looking for how can I get in a situation where I belong, where I am accepted, where I can put my suitcase down and relax. This is true of Joseph. At no time in his life did he ever belong. The day he was born, he was resented by his older brothers. And then he's sold into slavery. And while he's in Egypt, he's always an outsider. He's a Hebrew. He's not one of them. Something you might hear when you move here to the South from somewhere else, and you pronounce things like normal people. People will say, you read it, it says Shelbyville. But nobody here says Shelbyville. If you say Shelbyville or Lebanon, people will say to you, you ain't from around here, are you? Our road that goes in front of the church, it should be pronounced DeJarnay. But in Middle Tennessee, they call it DeJarnet. That's called Middle Tennessee French. There's a town just up 96. If you pronounce it like any other normal human being in the world, with Hispanic background especially, you would call it Las Casas. But if you're from Middle Tennessee, you'll call it Las Casas. I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you the truth. Shelbyville is called Shelbyville. Lebanon is called Lebanon. If you don't pronounce it correctly, they'll know you're not from around here. You won't get waited on in restaurants. Joseph's an outsider. He's not one of them. He grew up with a different language, different skin color, completely different culture, ate different kinds of food, worshiped differently than they did, a different musical style that he grew up with, everything different. And listen, it will never change for him for the rest of his life. He's never going back to what he grew up in. He's never going back to his hometown. He's going to be on the outside. But listen, if Joseph wouldn't have been okay with that, he would have never been able to thrive because he would have been caught up in the self-pity due to his last hurts. This is very true for all of us. Someday, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're feeling on the outside you're looking in. It might be a job. It might be your school. You don't find yourself in a good marriage, a good family, or you're always in bad health. You just don't fit in. But listen, this is what God is saying to us all this morning. It's okay. It's okay if you don't fit in. If we're going to thrive where we are, we've got to make it the best place we can. This is why we talked about in our mini sermon series, Thriving in Babylon. What God said to the Jewish people is go to Babylon, build cities, build houses, have children. As you make that city a better place, it'll go better for you. As the city prospers, you will prosper. So go and make it as prosperous as you can. Now, for a lot of us, we're here this morning and we're still in that search. Like, I'm just trying to find my people. I'm trying to find where I fit in. I just want you to know this about Joseph. He never had that. So here's the deal. If you want to make an impact in this world, if you want to be a world changer, you can have friends and you can have family, but you'll never be one of them. That's the price of leadership. Throughout history, the people who make the biggest spiritual impact on this world have been those who are the least attached to this world. The second thing I want you to see about Joseph is he got better instead of bitter. We got my friend Chip Dodd. If you don't know him, he's like super top book salesman. He's New York Times, everything. He travels around speaking all the time. He's got his own Instagram account, Dr. Chip Dodd. I get a percentage of his books. All right, so anyway, no, I'm just making that up. That's not true either. Okay. But anyway, I got an Instagram video he has here, and I want you to listen to this through the lens of Joseph's life. You ready?
So often the gratitude that we have for God's goodness towards us and the goodness of other people in our lives towards us has a great deal to do with what we do with hurt, what we do with sadness, and what we do with loneliness. If our hurt turns into resentment, then we become defensive, and then we have the right to defend ourselves, which really means to hurt others, which hurt people who don't heal, hurt other people. If our sadness turns into self-pity, we become people who decide we have the right no longer to try again or to reach out again or to risk again. And if loneliness doesn't push us towards relationship, then we become apathetic, and our uncaring towards ourselves becomes uncaring towards others. So hurt is made to bring us to healing, sadness made to bring us to seeking comfort, and loneliness made to bring us to relationship. And in that, we wind up returning to gratitude, and it ends up being really good.
Man, I'm just following along there with Chip, and then he goes into overdrive, and I'm just like, wait, that's good, slow down. What a great point. So I'm going to go back and just recap what he said. Listen, let's look at this through Joseph's lens. Did he have every right to feel hurt because of his past? The answer to that's what? Yes. Should he have felt sadness? The answer to that's what? Yes. Of course he should. Was it very reasonable for him to experience loneliness? The answer to that's what? Yes, of course. See, so many times we look at these as though they are negative emotions, but really, these are formative emotions. They drive us to search and long for God's best for us in the future. What do I mean by that? If you are hurt, as Chip said, it drives you to find healing. But if you live in that hurt, it will turn into resentment. You'll become defensive, and then what will happen is when anybody does something that gives you a little bit of flashback to the last time you were hurt, you'll throw up a wall and either step back or you'll come out with your claws. And that hurt will cause you to hurt others. You can live in your sadness. That can lead into self-pity, to where you stop trying to advance. You're just like, everything's against me, I just can't win. Joseph could have done that. He obviously was lonely when he first got there, not knowing the language, not knowing people. He could have just become apathetic and said, I'll just stay a slave. I'll just plant plants. I'm not going to thrive here in Egypt. I don't care. My life is over. But that loneliness drives us. It's a God-given emotion that drives us to mend fences, to build relationships. And so after 8 years of prison, I want you to see something in the scripture that just makes it so clear how Joseph had overcome things that his previous generations, for whatever reason, did not. It says sometime after this is about 8 years after he's in prison, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord the king. Now let me show you how this works. And the cupbearer and a baker, those were big deals back in ancient times. Still, it's a big deal today, but not as quite as big as it used to be, because the cupbearer was in charge of, before he handed the king something to drink, he had to take a big swig of it. And if he didn't drop over, then the king could have it, right? Basically, you were the guinea pig. So you had to really trust that guinea pig, because they could always fake it, right? Oh, that's great, old king. Then give it to him, then the king drops over. But the cupbearer, because he's always next to the king, is in a position of trust in that he's going to hear all the king's business. And then the baker, in the same way that the cupbearer sees all the liquid that's going to the king, the baker is seeing all the food that goes to the king. And these guys, imagine, just like in the White House today, the Secret Service oversees the people who oversees what the president's going to drink and the people who oversees what the president's going to eat. The Secret Service is overseeing those things, and something happened with Pharaoh. We don't know exactly what, but apparently something happened that made him sick, or they found something that maybe somebody was trying to get. My guess is he probably got sick, poisoned a little bit, and so there had to be this investigation by the Secret Service, the chief of the guard. How did this get through? What happened in Pharaoh's life? And so Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, like, you were the guys in charge of my food. There's going to be an investigation. One of you two dropped the ball, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody of the house of the captain of the guard, that's Potiphar, in prison where Joseph was confined. Watch this. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them, and they continued some time in his custody. This is why, again, I think that Potiphar must have known Joseph had integrity, is because he's saying to Joseph, I need you to take care of these two guys. They're high-ranking officials. One of them's guilty of something, and one of them's not. But until I can do this investigation, I want you to take care of both of them. And one night, these two guys are both dreaming, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison. They're under Joseph's care. Each had his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. And when Joseph came to them in the morning, key verse, he saw that they were troubled. This is how we know that Joseph has advanced spiritually and emotionally. Because when you're self-absorbed in your own pity, you don't have the ability to see other people's needs. This is one of the keys to life. No matter what you're going through, these are the people that I respect the most. I've gone to visit people in hospice before. And I'm going there to pray with them the last prayer before they go meet God Almighty. And it's amazing how many times I will go into people like that who still have their wits about them. And I'll say, hey, I'm here to pray for you. And they'll say, well, how's Miss D today? How are your kids? Like, cancer is ravaging their body. I always loved Lucas. Do you think he could come and just play the piano for me one more time? What a great son you have. And they're just going on and on. Why? Because they've got this self-awareness. They've got this emotional maturity. They're trusting God in those last hours. And that's what we see with Joseph, man. He hasn't allowed his hurt and his sadness and loneliness to make him so self-absorbed about having his own needs met that he's unable to care for the needs of others. And so he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, why are your faces downcast today? Like, what's up, guys? Like, it's not just they said something. He noticed something that most people don't notice, and it's just body language. Listen to me, church family. It is so easy to come here every week and watch people come in and out of the church and just, oh, hey, how you doing? But not watch for body language. We all want to be like Joseph in that we see others. This is a place where people will be seen. It's so easy, especially with as many people we come in here and parking and getting in and out and all that, to not see each other. Always be looking, how can I serve others? That's Joseph. And so they say to him, we've had these dreams, Joseph, and nobody to interpret them. And Joseph said, do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me. In other words, like God will give you the right answer. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what God says about your situation. So cupbearer starts out. He says, well, in my dream, there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. And as soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and so I took the grapes, and I pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, well, this is his interpretation. And the 3 branches are 3 days. And in 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, and he will restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hands as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do to me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. He's in God's waiting room, but that doesn't mean he wants to stay there. It's okay that he wants out, but now he's telling, listen, he wants this guy to do something for him at this point, but it starts with Joseph doing something for that guy. Do you follow? Always start your relationships with serving others. That's how Jesus did. He says, I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I've done nothing that they should put me into the pit. Like I haven't done anything wrong. Will you remember me? Well, now the chief baker hears this conversation going on. He sees, hey, man, he had a good dream interpretation. Let's try me. Like, hey, do you want to read the lines of my hands? You know, like, how are you doing this magical stuff? He says, well, let me tell you about my dream. Okay, there were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket, there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are also 3 days. Okay, great so far. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head. And you can just see the baker smiling from you. In other words, he's going to cut your head off. And he's going to hang you on a tree. And then the birds will eat the flesh from you. Now, if you would have been Joseph at this time, I mean, I don't know about me, but I like people to like me. I think if the guy would have told me the dream, I probably said, you know what, I need to do the Baptist thing, and I need to pray about this a little more. I'm not sure let me think about that a little bit. No, listen, Joseph loved him enough to tell him the truth. And listen what I'm about to say next. It's because he spoke the truth to the baker that the cupbearer is going to remember that Joseph is a man of integrity, and he's just going to say what God tells him to say. Listen, we do this thing out front where we measure like how many gospel conversations. We celebrate every time we click that clicker out there, every time we tell somebody about Jesus. But here's at the heart of telling people about their need for Jesus. They're not going to understand their need for Jesus, the good news about Jesus, unless they first understand the bad news about themselves. You see, you don't need good news unless there first is some bad news. And we have to love people enough to say, here's the bad news. You're a sinner and you're destined for an eternity apart from God. But here's the good news. Jesus Christ provides a way for you to have an eternity with him, and how he can even change your life right now to get you out of the brokenness that you're in and into something fulfilling in this life. Speak that truth. Joseph did that. Now, on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. It's 2 kinds of lifting up. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Can you imagine being in Joseph's spot? Like the cupbearer goes back to Pharaoh, he does it. I'm out of here. Like, I'm out today, I'm free. And Joseph's like, all right, man, remember me. See if you can get me out of here. Pharaoh, maybe give me a pardon. All right, I took care of you for the last few months here. Like, remember me. All right, cool, man. Joseph, you're awesome, dude. You took so great care of me. And then he gets back and he forgets all about Joseph. And then I love what Moses does here when he's writing the story, telling it from Joseph's perspective. Watch what happens next. He could have said, after 2 years, just putting the facts out there, But instead, he adds the word whole years. You could say 2 long years, 2 full years. Why is that important to the context of this story? Because those 2 years flew by for the cupbearer, but those were a long 700 days for Joseph. And that's what it feels like when you're sitting in God's waiting room. It's not just you've been there 2 years. You've been there 2 long years. Some of you have been in a job or a career you don't like for the last 10 years. And you would describe it not after 10 years at this job, you would say after 10 long years. Some of you are in a marriage. Dee and I celebrated our 30th anniversary not long ago, and I said, hey man, 33 years we had. And I said 28 good years, 5 of them not so good. Those were 5 long years. You know, honestly, the first 10 years of our marriage, we realized like, hey, we're not compatible. And some days were good, a lot of days weren't. We were stuck in God's waiting room, and it was hard. There were years, where I was stuck in situations under a senior pastor. I've had a lot of good senior pastors in my life. I had one that was not so good. And I remember back when I was in seminary, I had a guy named Charles Stanley. Y'all have ever heard of Charles Stanley? Y'all know who he is? I met him one time, and I was in student government. He came to Dallas or something. I don't even remember what it was. A few of us got to meet him. And I just asked him a question that my dad taught me to ask to people who were leaders, impact players in the world. I just asked him, I said, hey, Dr. Stanley, like if you were just going to tell me one thing I need to remember about ministry going forward in life, what would that be? And he said this quote, okay? He said, God rarely uses someone greatly until he has first hurt them deeply. And he just walked away. All right, thanks. Talked to the next people. And I just remember hearing that. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, whatever. And you know what? I didn't even tell my wife he told me that until years later when we were being hurt, when we felt like we were being backstabbed. And this is what we find in Joseph's life, is that God wasn't going to use him greatly until he first hurt them deeply. And when you get hurt, you can either be like Joseph and resolve those feelings of hurt, anger, bitterness, or you can work through them and see the hand of God through the process. So he's got 2 more years in the waiting room. But I have to share this, why he's in the waiting room. You see, listen, one of 2 things are true. Why God keeps hurting him deeply. Why God's keeping him in the waiting room. Don't miss these 2 things. Either Joseph wasn't ready for the situation that was coming next, or the situation wasn't ready for Joseph coming next. It's one of those 2. He needed 2 full years, 2 more years in the prison to get him ready for what was coming next. Why does God do that to us? You ever think about that? Why does God leave us in the waiting room so long? I mean, it is not fun. Some of you are in it right now. Why does God do it? Well, I'm going to give you an example of that I've just learned from my own life. Let me just state this first unequivocally. Parents, you all have an umbrella. And if you're by yourself and you've just got your umbrella, you're just taking care of you. That's all you got to worry about right now. And if you do something stupid, it'll hurt maybe some of your best friends or the people you did it to, but it really just hurts the people under your umbrella. But once you get married and have kids, dads, if you do something stupid, then it hurts everybody under your umbrella. And so, man, God's got to watch giving you that bigger umbrella because the decisions you make affect more people. And in the same way, if you work as a student ministry servant here, you're involved in student ministry, and you go out and let's say you've got the 9th grade girls, you're one of our ladies, you got the 9th grade girls and you're watching them, and then you go out and do something really dumb. It doesn't just affect your husband and your kids. It's also going to affect those ninth grade girls, some of which will say, I don't know that I believe this Jesus stuff because if this person failed, I just don't know. I don't know that I'll come back to church anymore. And let me tell you what, every new members class we have, I hear a story of church hurt. Somebody that had a bigger umbrella hurt somebody and they quit coming. And they're now venturing out to come to church one more time. Give it one more try. And that's if just a student volunteer. But can you imagine if Tyler Clem does something stupid? It's not just going to hurt Andy and his 3 kids. It's not just going to hurt the parents of the youth. If Tyler went out and just did something really dumb, all of you would just be like, why did he do that? And it would hurt you and it would hurt your faith. Because he's got a bigger umbrella. But this is what I learned from Dr. Stanley's words. If I go out and do something really stupid, and I've seen some of my pastor friends do this, there are people and their entire families that haven't been back to church in 25 years because of a mean senior pastor. Because of a guy that was ruthless, who didn't love his staff well. Teenagers who grew up and married people who didn't go to church, and now they're raising their kids who don't go to church because the guy wasn't ready for his big umbrella. This is why the Bible says, listen, do not be hasty in the laying on of hands. This is why God wasn't hasty in putting Joseph in his next job position. Joseph wasn't ready. It's not that he was a bad person. His character hadn't been formulated to be strong enough to handle the weight that was about to be placed upon his shoulders. So the Bible says, after 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed this dream. Here's the dream. There were 7 fat cows in the Nile, and they were followed by 7 skinny cows. Then he had another dream. There were 7 things of barley, heads of barley, and wheat. And then they were followed by 7 famished heads of wheat. What does this mean? And so he's asking everybody. He wakes up in the morning and he sends in, he calls for his magicians, chapter 41, verse 8. Everybody in Egypt is coming in, all the wise men. And Pharaoh says his dreams, but nobody can interpret them to Pharaoh. Then, watch this is big. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody of the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, and we each had its own dream with its own interpretation. And there was this young Hebrew there. Young guy, he's 28 years old. A servant of the captain of the guard. And when we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dreams. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged. In other words, the cupbearer said, hey man, I remember back a few years ago, I know a guy who can help you with that. And I want to share this to everybody in the room, but especially to our new college students as you're starting your college days. Don't forget this. Every day is a job interview. Mike Ciricione's here this morning, and he didn't know it. Where is Mike? Are you in the room right now, Mike? Is he in here? Mike, will you stand up? There's a reason why he's in the room today. It's because he's out just living a life integrity, doing youth ministry there for years. Then he went to a church, and while he's at this other church, he became friends with a pastor who is now best friends with my best friend in seminary. I'll say that again. He became friends with a pastor who's now great friends with my best friend in seminary. So when his resume rolls in and I see where he's from, I call my best friend. I say, hey, do you know somebody at this church? Yeah, I know Mike Ciricione. Like, I know a guy there. He gave me a number to a guy at the village church that used to work with him. And I'm like, hey, this guy applied for the job. I know he's got the competency to do this. I know he's got the speaking skills to do it. But far more important to me than that is, does he have the character to hold the umbrella to start a new campus across town? And that guy gave me a glowing reference. Listen, Mike never knew. You can sit down, Mike. Thank you. He never knew that while he was working that job, that a pastor was watching him saying, man, you can count on that guy. He keeps his word. He treats people with respect. And every day he's doing that job interview. Listen, I want to share with all of you, like, there was a day when my campus minister's wife said to my now current minister wife, who was struggling with her very unspiritual boyfriend, hey, D, you need to think about getting with another guy. And D was like, yeah, the guy I'm leading, he's not going to be a spiritual leader or whatever. And the campus minister's wife says, do I have a deal for you? There's a guy in the youth ministry, I think he's got kind of a liking to you. I spent my entire freshman year building up collateral with the campus minister's wife. I didn't know that was doing, but praise God when she said to D, break up with that loser and get with this guy. D looks at the conversation differently today, but I'm thankful. Why? Because every day of my freshman year was a job interview. And I got a wife out of it. You never know. This is true for all of us. You never know when you treat somebody with kindness, when you tip somebody at a restaurant, when you say hello to somebody you're walking by on a sidewalk, when you're practicing hard and diving after a ball, when you're giving your 100% to whatever you do, just like Joseph did in Potiphar's house and then how he did when he was in Potiphar's prison. You never know when somebody's going to say to a Pharaoh, when somebody's going to say to a CEO, when somebody's going to say to a pastor, I know a guy. I know a girl that can give you exactly what you need. This is the person you want to hire. And let me tell you what, students, man, that's church family. We say to each other, I know a guy. I know a girl. So here he is. This is his shot. It's his Hamilton moment, okay? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I've had a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, it's not of me. See the humility here, but God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. And so he tells him the story of the cows and the wheat. And then Joseph says, well, God has shown to Pharaoh what he's about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after that, there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land. And the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select such a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain and under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are about to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. Well, this proposal, it pleased Pharaoh and all of his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Now, can you imagine as they're preparing to bring Joseph in, over here's the captain of the guard. And they're looking, and he's heard, man, this guy can run a prison like nobody's business. He's an incredible administrator. Prison's just been blessed since he's been there. And the captain of the guard said, man, it was the same way when he was at my house. Dude's dependable, he's reliable, he's smart. He can handle all this. He can take the big umbrella. Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and as wise as you are. All those years of God's waiting room prepared him for this day. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I've set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand, and he put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain on it. In other words, Joseph has signature authority. Whatever he signs off on, it's the same as the Pharaoh here. And he made him ride in his second chariot, and he's on Air Force 2, okay? And they called out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set Joseph over all the land of Egypt. This is what I want you to see. When I say I know the guy, I'm not closing with the story about Joseph. See, there was another guy, when he was 13, people recognized there was something special about him. All the leaders of the nation were gathered around and said, man, this guy is smart. He's got the Spirit of the Lord upon him. But he wasn't ready for what God was going to put on him when he was 30 years old. What was his name? I know a guy, his name's Jesus. Look at what it says about Jesus when he was 12, turned 13. It says, Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and favor with God and man. What do we learn about Jesus here? This is really important. Not only, we expect Jesus to grow up as a teenager from a boy into a man, physical maturity. But what this verse also says is that he grew in his relationship with God and his favor with God, but also in his social skills. Like he learned how to relate to others. He learned how to communicate to others. He learned how to serve others. He learned how to be with others, to lead men. But he also increased in wisdom. This is what I want you to understand. When Jesus came down from heaven, don't misunderstand this about our Savior. Paul says in Philippians 2, when he came from heaven, he emptied himself of something. No longer did he know everything. If he would have known everything, how could he be increased in wisdom? Jesus had to learn things just like we can learn things, so he could empathize with us in our weaknesses, in our struggles. Writer of Hebrews says, although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. He learned it. He didn't know. Like the greatest place that we see Jesus learn obedience is the Father wants to do it this way. Physically, I don't want to go through it that way. Father, if it's possible, let the cup pass from me, but nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. He had to learn that. Listen, if Jesus had to learn by sitting in God's waiting room, why should any of us expect something different? It's not because, if you're in God's waiting room, it might be because you've done something wrong, but more likely than not, it's just because God's got an interview for you someday. He's got something coming for you. And Jesus is in the waiting room with you. That's why he went through it. We do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Yes, Jesus was tempted to cheat on a test. You ever think about that? How could he be tempted? How many of you were ever tempted to cheat on a test? Raise your hands. How many of you were tempted to cheat because you didn't know the answer? Everybody who just raised their hand. So if Jesus is going to be tempted to cheat on a test, there had to be something on the test he didn't know. Do you see that? So God had him empty that stuff to go down here. Why? To learn, man, I don't know exactly what the future holds. Even to this day, Jesus doesn't know when he's coming back. Only the Father knows that, Jesus said. But while he was here in God's waiting room, he said this of himself. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. This is what I want you to understand. I know a guy who modeled what life looks like on this earth. Like Joseph, we all have our dreams. Many of us are serving in God's waiting room. And while we're waiting, we do what Joseph did. We do what Jesus did. We love God, we love others, and we serve others. And this is what I want to say, especially to college students today. You're in the phase of life right now, teenagers over here the same, where you're just figuring out, and other people are going to start telling you, wow, this, you're really good at that. Somebody else is going to tell you, you're really good at that. I was going to be an optometrist, but people constantly told me, man, you got a good big mouth. You could be a speaker someday. And then that same pastor's wife, her husband said to me, hey, won't you try just preaching one Sunday morning? Let's see how it goes. And this is the key to life. You love God, you love others. Those that you love start telling you, you're good at that. You're gifted at that. Here's the key. You find your gift. Then you spend the rest of your life giving that gift away. And God's developing that gift in you. Where? Sitting in God's waiting room. Enjoy the wait. Enjoy the process. God's preparing you